council meeting of August 24th, 2026. Please remember to silence your devices. And if anybody who would like to speak during the public period, to fill out a speaker card, that would help us keep the record better. They're out in the lobby, but they're also up at the podium. But don't let that deter you if you have no one else who can speak to us anyway. So let's begin this evening, as we traditionally do, with a moment of silence. Please rise and join me in the pledge of allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. We have a presentation to start with, and Mark, would you please introduce the item and get this rolling?
Absolutely. First item on the agenda is from Orange County Public Schools regarding the 1 mil ad valorem continuation. We have the Chief of Communications for Orange County Public Schools. Always glad to see you, Scott. Scott Howard here tonight to talk a little bit about what they want to accomplish with the referendum. So I'll just turn it over to Scott as soon as his presentation gets pulled up.
Well, thank you, Mark. Good evening, Councilman. Thank you for having me, Mayor. Appreciate it. Scott Howard, I'm the Chief Communications Officer for Orange County Schools, and I am here to talk about the 1 mil special millage for schools. That is a renewal that'll be on the ballot in this November. And I just want to say it's not lost on me or the school district or any of us that we know we're facing an Amendment 3, a property tax amendment that'll be out there. And this is not that. And this is something that has been part of Orange County for the past 16, it'll be 16 years. It's been part of our operational budget. I just want to go through, but today I want to talk a little bit about, I'll give you a little bit of background, some of the positive things that are happening within Orange County in general. Talk a little bit about declining enrollment. Declining enrollment's been something that has been in the news. It's been talked about. I want to talk about the factors of what's caused that and what's gone into that. And then I'm going to talk about the impact of the of public education in general, and then also the 1 mil. So I appreciate you having me here today. Just real quick, these are our board members. We're going to have 3 new board members, and we're going to have a new board chair. So the top row, 3 of those members will be rolling off, and Angie Gallo will be our new chair. The bottom row, including Stephanie Vanos from District 6, who represents Maitland. She is not up for re-election this year. Her election will be in 2 years, and Dr. Maria Vasquez will be retiring at the end of this year. So she announced that before the school year started. We are the 8th largest school district in the United States, and the 4th largest in Florida when you include traditional and charter. We're actually the 3rd largest in Florida if you just look at district operated enrollment. So those that come into our district operated schools, we're the 3rd largest. We jump over Hillsborough, who has quite a few charters, and we're close to jumping over Broward. So Broward is about 3,800 students more than we are right now. So as far as the district operated side, we're still declining, but not as rapidly as some of the other districts, larger districts around us. We are an A school district for the 3rd year in a row. That's the first time in our history. 101 A schools of the traditional schools, and 100% of our schools are A, B, or C. Our graduation rate is 97.2%. That's up from 49.5% in 2000. So very proud of that graduation rate among our traditional schools. worked very hard. We have 23 high schools, and all of those schools work. Graduation rate doesn't just start when, those seniors that are coming in, they start their freshman year, or even before that, trying to identify those students that will need that help, will need that to get across that graduation stage in the spring. Our vision, every student graduates prepared and inspired for a thriving future, and we do that with our families and community. We empower students with superior academic experience, essential life skills, and boundless opportunities. Prepare, inspire, and empower. Why public schools matter. I want to talk just a little bit about that and give some of the public school advantage. So community and neighborhood based. A lot of our schools are embedded within the neighborhoods. They serve the neighborhoods around them. They're walkable, especially our elementary and middle schools. We have certified trained teachers, naturally benchmarked. We're Cognia accredited. So every 5 years, the district goes through an accreditation process that we're going through right now. We'll have a new accreditation come September. And so that process is rigorous, but it ensures that we have the highest standards and as compared across the country. We have high quality academics, arts, and extracurriculars. All students eat all meals at no charge if they wish, and that's at least continuing through this year. That may stop at the end of this year because of some of the changes at the federal level when it comes to the school food nutrition program. We have outstanding support services from special education to gifted to English language learners. Talk a little bit about declining enrollment. Now that I've talked about some of the positive things, we'll talk about some of the things that are challenges that we're dealing with. And declining enrollment is certainly that. So I'll give you a history of enrollment. So if you go back to 2002, we were experiencing an extreme increase in student enrollment, an acceleration going from about 257,000 students to over 175,000. When the recession hit in 2007, we saw this leveling out of the enrollment during that time. Housing, if you couldn't get a mortgage, if you could get a mortgage, you probably, the houses weren't selling, weren't turning over. Houses were, basically worth half as much as what was owed on them at the time. And so you didn't see a lot of that turn that you would see. And so we saw this stagnation of our enrollment. And then in 2014, when things started to open back up, you saw this acceleration. And in 2017, Hurricane Maria came and we had about 3,000 additional students on top of that. So that acceleration continued and put us to the highest point, almost 215,000. And then the pandemic hit and we lost about 10,000 students overnight. They started to recover, and then universal vouchers and the expansion of choice. Anyone could get a voucher to go to any school that qualified, regardless of income, regardless of prior public attendance. And so we saw the decline there. Now let me talk, that was the choice piece, and I talked a little bit about the increase. Let me show you some of the numbers. So about 5,900 students we've lost between October of 2024 and October of 2025. We'll get our next count. Right now, our 10-day count, we're looking at roughly about 6,000 student decline, kind of year over year. We'll have our final numbers by October because that's when our surveys happen and we do the measurements. But over a 3-year period, we're looking at about 8,700 student decline. Let me talk about why this is happening. There's 4 reasons. So declining birth rates in the United States. So last year and the year before, 2024, we had the lowest birth rates in the history of this country. In 2027, we had the highest birth rates in the history of this country. In 2007. In 2007, we had the highest birth rates in the history of the country. Babies that were born in 2007 graduated last year and the year before. Every birth cohort after that across the country and globally has declined. And you can see Gen Z and Gen Alpha continues to decline. The pandemic was the lowest, and then you saw a little bit of an uptick and then a downturn after the pandemic to where we're at the lowest point now. So 18 years from now, you'll have the lowest enrollment potential in college, post-secondary, or 20 18 years from now, but also then your 24-year-olds who would be entering the workforce 24 years from now will be the lowest because of birth rates. So birth rates have moved through our system through a 13-year cycle that we're seeing that over time. So that's one of the factors. The other factors are housing trends. What we're seeing is we're not seeing the housing turnover that we've seen in the past. We would see families would raise their children in their homes. They would downsize and move. They would sell their house and new families would move in and they would raise their children, and you'd see a turn within the enrollment. In a lot of our aging older neighborhoods, you're not seeing that. You're seeing a trend called aging in place. People raise their family in their homes. They say, we're going to stay in our house. We like our house. We're comfortable here. We'll fix it up. We'll even expand it and bring our adult children back in and live with us if they need to and they can't find housing. That's happening in a lot of these aging neighborhoods, and so you're not seeing the turnover. We closed or consolidated 7 schools. A lot of that was because of their housing is still there. It's just not producing the same number of students, and the student generation isn't the same as it was. So you go from a school that has an enrollment of 600 or 700 and they're below 400 because that turn is not happening. They're not replacing themselves. Housing trends, some of the data and stats, 88 to 95% of adults 50 and older want to remain in their home, in their current home. Before the pandemic, you had about 40 out of 1,000 homes were turning over in Orange County. After, it was about 44 out of 1,000 during that year, the immediately after in 2021. Now it's about 27 houses out of 1,000 are turning over. So, we have growth in Orange County. The growth is happening in Lake Nona, Horizon West, some in Apopka with new construction, but a lot of our more established neighborhoods, we're not seeing the turnover at the same rate. The sunsetting with the temporary protective status, or TPS for immigrant groups, we saw 2,500 fewer students as a result of that impact. When we track our immigrant students groups, we saw in about 1,200 were Venezuelan students when the TPS took place. We just had the recent removal or sunsetting of the TPS for Haitian students. We don't know what the impact of that will be on the district, but we'll be looking at that in the same metrics that we used to measure before. And then the third is the family empowerment scholarships or taxpayer funded vouchers. Those are also obviously putting pressure on. And I like to tell people it's not an exiting problem, like a lot of people aren't leaving necessarily. It's an entering. There's not enough either coming in because of the birth rates, housing trends, or the temporary protective status. It's really it's a combination of the two, but it's entering. It's getting the enough students that are coming into the system. For us, it cost us about $23 million last year in declining enrollment. For operational efficiency, just to give you an example, an elementary school has to have 680 students to be operationally efficient. That means they can pay for all of the resources that support students that aren't directly in the classroom. That would be your principal, assistant principal, front office staff, cafeteria staff, custodial, all of those resources around the students. The students, in order to do that, you have to have a certain number of students. And for an elementary school, it's 680. Our district budget, 53% of our district budget is local property tax. 47% roughly is state revenue, sales tax, other state revenues that we get from Tallahassee. Our money is spent, just the breakdown to give you an idea, 78 cents is spent on teaching, transporting, supervising, and counseling students, 11 cents on acquiring, operating, and maintaining school facilities, 7 cents on library materials, staff training, curriculum development, and 4 cents is on central office, fiscal services, general administration. That's how the district breaks out and spends the money. We have the lowest administrative cost per student amongst our large urban districts. We're actually 12th largest of the 67 districts in Florida as measured by the Department of Education. show you a little bit of breakdown on our budgeted funding per student. So going back to the recession, which I talked about before, in July of 2007, you see we're about at $7,200 per student. At that point, the recession hit, the legislature cut the budget by about $500 a student in the fall. And then after that, cut another $500 per student. And you can see the decline. So the orange represents the per student funding by the state. The blue is the federal stimulus money that we received for 2 years. And then the green is the EduJobs money, which was also federal money that was pushed down to districts. And by 2012, as the state revenue started to come back slightly, we fortunately had the advantage of the Orange County voters approving the 1 mil special millage, which you can see based on the CPI line or the consumer price index, the inflationary line. We're about halfway to the CPI going back to that 2007 level. So the 1 mil has been able to help to stabilize us over that time, and we've continued to invest it. And it is about 10% of our overall budget. Here's why the millage was needed. The board doesn't set their millage rate. The legislature does. So in FY10, the millage rate was 5.4 mils. So 1 mil of property tax is $1 for every $1,000 of assessed value on the tax. So it was $5.42.5 in per 1,000 was the required local effort. That's what funds our schools. This year, the board approved a 3.201 mil, which was set by the legislature. So a more than 2 mil reduction over a 15-year period, with the 1 mil providing a little less than half of that back over that time. If that helps us to maintain our operational levels. So you see the breakdown there. This is how we spend our special millage revenue and how it's broken down. So it's projected to generate about $255 million if it were to be renewed. $163 million goes directly towards about 2,000 teachers. $54 million compensates staff, both educational support staff, cafeteria, custodial, as well as teachers. That has been invested in their raises and insurance benefits over time. $6 million supplements for arts and athletics. Field trips is $3.3 million. And then we are required to by law, we've done this since 2010, but by law, we're required now to provide a proportionate share to charters, which is $28.2 million. Just to give you a comparison between Orange County and Miami-Dade and Broward, our two other large districts so our 1 mil operating revenue is $242 million right now. It's projected to go to $255. You can see Miami-Dade's is more than double ours, so $317 million, and Broward is $90 million more. They have 125,000 more students than us, Miami-Dade, and Broward has 37,000. That's charter and traditional. Their 1 mil generates $509 more in Miami-Dade, and in Broward, $191. But, and this is the difference, Orange County has, since 2010, and their 1 mil is relatively new, has invested in school counselor, school psychologist, librarian, audio, visual, media specialist, professional instructional staff, visiting teachers, and social workers to the tune of 2,965 teachers. That's 562 more than Miami-Dade and 1,000 plus more than Broward. So we're investing that back into the school to ensure that those resources are around our children at the school level. Average teacher salary, according to the Florida Department of Education, $60,030 in Orange County, $57,100 in Miami-Dade, and $59,662 in Broward. So we exceed their average teacher salaries as well. So here's the breakdown and how the millage election results have gone over the last 4 cycles. So when it was first approved, 54% approval. That was obviously during the height of the recession. November of 2014, 76%, 84% in August of 2018, and 82% in November of 2022. This is the ballot language that will be on the ballot, and it essentially is to compensate teachers and educational support employees, preserve academic programs such as arts, athletics, and student activities. And it would go into effect July 1, 2027, and would be good for 4 years. The average cost to a homeowner, and we took the median assessed home value of $355,800, would be $28 a month. And again, it's a continuation, so this isn't a new tax. If they were paying that amount before, they'll continue to pay. There's even, because if a homeowner has owned their home since 2010, prior to the rollback in the millage, plus having the caps on the assessments, they may be paying as much or less in real dollars now as they were then because of the rollbacks and the caps. So again, this is a renewal and it's a continuation and not a new tax. If you want to connect with us, we have, certainly this is our social media. I got to throw that on the Chief Communications Officer. So, and then if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council members. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Scott. That was a great presentation, very effective, I think, shows us where the money goes. Of course, public schools are critical for us here in Maitland. I think the 3 public schools that we have here are really the backbone of a lot of our communities. And so it's very important to have this information, and hopefully there's lots of people watching tonight who will get this information. I know you're out there doing your best to communicate all this in this very difficult property tax environment that is going to be in November. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Howlett?
No.
None?
Mayor, if I may, just 2 things. One is, you mentioned the property tax amendment, that'll be on there. So the school board initiative is always the last item on the ballot. So I like to tell people Orange County Public Schools is first in your heart, last on the ballot. Just remember that when you go there, and I'm here to educate, right? I can't advocate, but if you remember it's last on the ballot, you know where to go. Also, Mayor, if it's okay, I was going to give a quick update for the Maitland Fund. You all, just to give you kind of where we are on that. So the Maitland Fund was the $300,000 that was invested with the foundation in order to provide money for before and after school programs at Domrick, Lake Sibylla, and Maitland Middle School. We will distribute $8,000 from that fund at the beginning of the school year to Maitland. Maitland Middle will get $3,379, Domrick $2,839, and Lake Sibylla $1,781. I do want to say that because of the increase, the fund has done very well. So we're going to go back and have a conversation with the principals at each of the schools. And we have 2 new principals, one at Maitland and one at Lake Sibylla, just to talk about the fund and some of the things. So the fund's value right now is $370,000, almost $371. It's $379.79 as of July 31st. So the fund's done very well on the investment side. It's certainly grown. We'll back out the $8,000 out of that and then go back to the principals and see if there's some special projects that they need or want to do for before after school that the fund could help, because we want to go back to the original intent is to make sure that they have the funds that they need to help support their students before and after school. And of course, we'll distribute that based on the FTE model as we've done in the past. So. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for that update. That's a nice extra bonus for our public schools that we created that fund several years ago, and it always generates a nice little operational use for the schools. So thank you, Mr. Howlett. Thank you all. Thank you for having me. I appreciate your time. Thank you. Okay. We have another presentation this evening about the water and wastewater fund analysis with Mr. Brian Matz. Mark, would you please introduce that item?
Sure, just real briefly. As we discussed during the enterprise fund workshop, we have a operating and capital fund in our water and wastewater funds that is moving forward. One of the concerns that I had when reviewing our 5-year capital plan was whether we would have the rate structure to support it. As you all know, when we adopt our water and sewer rates, we adopt them in 5-year increments. We are in the 4th year of that 5-year increment right now. So based upon the size of that capital plan, we asked Brian to take a look at our rate structure to ensure that we had adequate funding to make sure we can make it through that next 5 years. As I've shared with all of you, when we started this process, I had some concerns that we could be looking at a significant increase over the first 2 years, upwards of 50%. Fortunately, as we discussed again at the enterprise fund workshop, my fears did come to realization. We're looking at a significantly smaller increase than that over the 5-year period, which Brian is going to be going over in a minute. So this is just a presentation tonight. Rates need to be adjusted by ordinance. So at the end of Brian's presentation, after you get all your questions answered, we'll talk about steps to move forward. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Brian.
Well, good evening, members of the council, staff, members of the public. My name is Brian Mance from GovRates, and as Mark said, I'm going to be talking about the results of the water and wastewater rate study. I'm targeting 15 minutes for this presentation. I will try and get through it as efficiently as possible because I know you have a lot to discuss tonight. So as most of you are aware, the water and wastewater utilities of the city provide essential services on a continuous basis where public health and safety is a primary objective. They're highly regulated by the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, the St. Johns River Water Management District, the Department of Health, the Environmental Protection Agency, and permits from these agencies require full compliance. There are a lot of reporting requirements, and the city could always face possible fines, consent orders, and the associated legal expenses if the city doesn't meet necessary regulatory requirements and keeps the systems in good working condition, or if there are utility infrastructure failures that cause pollution. As an enterprise fund, as Mark alluded to, the operations are primarily funded through user rates, and they're about $75 million installed cost of aging utility assets under city management, some dating back to the 1960s. And this installed cost would be a lot higher if right-sized to today's dollars. So the first issue is our critical for this fund, critical capital reinvestment needs, which of course is a public health issue. Utility infrastructure is often out of sight, out of mind. But like I said, the utility system dates back to the 1960s. There's a lot of 40-plus-year-old infrastructure. And this picture, these are really stock photos, but they show just pictures of what infrastructure looks like after 40 plus years. The utility is estimated about $57 million of capital needs through the 2031, which are primarily renewals and replacements of this ancient infrastructure to meet current regulatory requirements. The replacement of 60-plus-year-old water lines improves water pressure and fire protection, and there's also replacement of septic tanks with city sewer. But it is important to recognize that the longer that the city defers necessary renewals and replacements, the higher the cost to ratepayers, because this kind of infrastructure won't go away by itself. It's something that has to be addressed. As far as the funding plan, it reflects a balance. The proposed funding plan reflects a balanced mix of debt financing and internal funding sources. You don't want to become completely reliant on debt. The city staff will continue to pursue grant funding opportunities. As Maitland is a wealthier community, usually there's a lot of competition for grant funding, and grants are usually awarded to communities that are that are more disadvantaged. So but what we're considering is about 56% financing through debt, with the rest from primarily from internal funding sources. Another issue affecting the enterprise fund is substantial operating expense increases. And it's important to recognize that utilities have limited control over a lot of your operating expenses, like chemicals, electricity, supply parts for repair. These are driven by global market forces, and you have limited control. You also need to preserve your ability to fill positions and keep employees, recognizing that a well-trained, experienced, and sufficient utility staff is critical for effectively running the utilities 24 hours a day and 365 days a year, for maintaining your level of service and for emergency preparedness. As many of you are aware, your wastewater is primarily treated by Altamonte Springs and in Orlando. And again, the costs for treatment from these entities, that's another uncontrollable cost. And the treatment costs are about 50% of your wastewater operating expenses. And it is important to recognize that permanent increases in costs must ultimately be passed through customers through rate increases. And if rates are not gradually increased over time to keep up with the increased costs, larger catch-up increases will be required in the future. Because, like I said, these are your utilities are affected by a lot of uncontrollable costs that are going to continue increasing regardless of whether Maitland increases its rates accordingly. Another issue is the need to preserve access to debt financing. The city needs a multi-year rate plan adopted to secure debt financing and make payments on existing debt. When evaluating the utility's ability to repay debt, the low-cost state revolving fund program, lending institutions, and credit rating agencies will only consider adjustments that have actually been adopted. And as part of your application for these loans, they want to see a copy of your rate ordinance that says that these are adopted. And they're not adopted. They won't. Their analysts will not count those increases as when they're evaluating your ability to pay debt. And 100% pay-as-you-go funding of the capital program would require much higher rate adjustments. We obviously want to make sure that the fund continues to have healthy cash balances and debt service coverage, which provides the flexibility to adjust in the event of an unplanned major capital need, or an unfunded mandate from regulatory agencies, or if costs are higher than estimated. So the proposed water and wastewater rate adjustments, as you can see, as Mark mentioned, for 2027, we're recognizing the need for a 12% adjustment, followed by another 12% in 2008 and 2029, and then some 6% in 2030 and 2031. This comes out in 2027. That's about an extra $11 per month. If you were to take the total utility bill and divide it by the average 5,000 gallons, that comes out to about 2.1 cents per gallon of water and wastewater service. So for 2.1 cents per gallon, water is delivered to your house and then taken away once you're done with it. So when you consider 2.1 cents to 3 cents per gallon of water and sewer service compared to the cost per gallon of other commodities, that helps communicate the value of water and sewer service. Another thing we want to do is we always want to vet our financial plan for affordability. The Environmental Protection Agency has historically used 4.5% of median household income as the affordability metric. So, and as you can see, we're at between 1.2 and 1.6% of median household income under this plan. So by any utility industry standard, this is an extremely affordable plan. And as we talked about, it helps you, it will enable you to address your identified critical reinvestment needs. The proposed adjustments are comparable to those of other local utilities. You can see that Winter Springs just recently adopted a plan for an 18%, 10-10. Groveland is in the middle of they needed to adjust they're building a brand new wastewater treatment facility. They adopted 40-10-10-10. City of Oviedo 9999999. Again, the adjustments that we're showing for Maitland are very comparable to what I'm seeing in other areas. I can tell you that's pretty tame. The other week, I had to present the need for 36% adjustments for a utility that hasn't increased their rates since 2017. They're having to build a new water treatment plant to deal with PFAS, and that is just not a very pleasant conversation. It's best to just gradually increase the rates over time so that you don't have to have these large catch-up increases. So as far as a projected financial performance under the projected rate and financial plan, these bars here show the different expenditure or revenue requirements, as we call them, that we have to recover from rates. So this blue bar is operating expenses, this green bar is debt, and this light blue is pay-as-you-go or cash-funded capital projects. You can see this dotted red line is revenues under existing rates, and then this solid red line is revenue under the proposed adjustments. So you can see that under existing rates, we're eventually going to get to a point without rate adjustments where we wouldn't be able to fund our all of our debt, and we could run into some debt service coverage problems, which could get us in trouble with some of our with the state revolving loan with the lenders and with your outstanding debt. But you can see that under this plan, by the end of the forecast period, we have a rate plan so that the rates are recovering all of our requirements. And here, this shows cash and coverage projections where we set a target and we're meeting that target without going overboard. So that and that's certainly what we want to make sure we do. And like I said, under this plan, the utility remains healthy financially, which provides lower rates over the long term. As far as the comparison is concerned, you can see where Maitland is here. Under the proposed fiscal year 2027 rates, you would be below the current rates of Mount Dora, Oviedo, Orange City, and Deltona. But all of the utilities in this comparison will be increasing their rates in the near future, most of them October 1st. So the idea is that as these other utilities are addressing the same kinds of issues that Maitland is, the Maitland's rates will continue to be affordable. And I just did want to mention that at least 40 utilities in the state of Florida have higher current water and wastewater rates than what is proposed for Maitland in fiscal year 2027. But a rate or bill comparison is not a report card on how well a utility is performing, because there are a lot of reasons why user rates differ among utilities. What's more important is, are you addressing your public health needs, and are you addressing these renewal and replacement funds and replacing this 40-plus-year-old infrastructure, some of which dates back to the 1960s. But there are a lot of different reasons. It is a discussion point, but a lot of times when you see utilities with lower rates, you find that they're kicking the can down the road, and at some point they're going to have to play catch up. So it's not a report card. Another thing we looked at are the water and wastewater connection fees, which support a growth policy of growth paying for growth. They're very common in the utility industry. Since Maitland doesn't have a lot of customer growth, there's not going to be a tremendous amount of connection fee revenue, but it is good to right size them just in case you have some redevelopment. And we are proposing right now the existing water and wastewater connection fees, which again these are paid by new development, not by monthly users. Right now it's at $6,215. We're proposing that they increase to $7,595. The cost per gallon these calculations meet reasonableness tests, but you can see that as far as comparison is concerned, your Maitland's position on the connection fee comparison is unchanged. You would be increasing a little bit. So our recommendations are to adopt the multi-year plan for fiscal years 2027 to 2031 with the automatic inflationary adjustments after fiscal year 2031. Smaller incremental rate increases over time help to avoid future rate shock and catch-up increases. As we've talked many times, the user rates are affordable and competitive. They are necessary to have access to debt financing of your critical capital needs, because 100% pay-as-you-go funding would require much higher adjustments. And as we talked about, when evaluating the city's ability to repay utility debt, they're not the SRF loan program, the low-cost SRF loan program would not count any adjustments that have not been adopted. The recommendation is to adopt the proposed water and wastewater connection fees, which are right-sized based on most recent local data, and again, they're competitive. And to the extent that you do collect some, they do help to reduce the need for future user rate adjustments. And then the last recommendation is just to update the financial and rate plan as needed. We do recommend a checkup or review at least once every 3 years. But a key takeaway is that proactive financial planning helps preserve the ability to gradually phase in any rate adjustments, so you're not in that position of that utility talk I was talking about, where I just had to present the need for 3 consecutive 36% rate adjustments, which is just not a pleasant conversation for everyone involved. And that concludes, I guess. I mean, the next steps, if the council on board, would be to go through a customer notification process, and then come back with a rate ordinance. And that's
Okay, thank you. And what is the schedule for that, Mark?
We could have the rate ordinance ready as soon as the next meeting. So it's an ordinance. Then we have to notify all our customers of the rate increase prior to adoption. So it could be ready in August and then September at the soonest.
Okay. Thank you, Brian, for that. So I did have a question about the relative size of the increases that you're proposing for Maitland as opposed to the other cities around. I think it was slide number 8. I don't know if you can go back to. Yeah, there we go. 9, I guess it was.
9? Okay.
And the one you're proposing, aside from Winter Springs, which looks like an outlier there, what you're proposing for Maitland again is we're starting off significantly above these, right?
Yeah, and it is important to know, like Deltona has some 6.66%, but they are, as far as comparisons are concerned, they're already right here. They're the highest in the area. So some of these, but anyway, let me
maybe go back to the proposal for us as well, which is, I guess.
I keep going the wrong way. I apologize.
All right.
Okay.
And then the 5 that you're proposing for Maitland again are But 12, 12,
12, 12, 12, 6, 6.
Yeah, and just for clarification, we already have a 6% built in this year under the current ordinance, so it would be additional 6 this year, then 12, 12, 6, 6.
Okay. Okay. Does anybody have any questions?
So just so I can understand, about 50% of our operating costs goes to other people treating our wastewater.
Yes, sir.
So I just want to point out that that means that's something that goes elsewhere that we produce and they treat it for us. So if we had to do that ourselves, these numbers might be a little bit higher. So by paying somebody else to do that for us, and we did have at one time our own wastewater treatment plant and opted to go other directions.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Scott, you look like you had something there for a moment.
No, I was helpful to hear that about the 6% already built in.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anybody else?
So I know when people look at percentages that sometimes that can seem kind of daunting, and when you understand how that translates into real dollars, it becomes a little bit less concerning. Can you talk about what the real dollar effect would be for
Sure.
residents at all?
Sure. For 2027, for a user of 5,000 gallons, that's about $11.42 extra per month, or 2.1 cents per. That translates to you're paying the effective rate of 2.1 cents per water and wastewater service, and so yeah, that's the dollar amount.
Right. So while the percentages may seem quite significant, perhaps the actual dollar increases are not.
Yeah,
Something that
one of the things that we're very keen on is, I mean, we want to vet the one of the things we do look at is, like I said, the percentage of median household income, because we want to make sure that would be considered an affordable plan. And this is, based on, Maitland is definitely a wealthier community than a lot of the places I work with. By any financial utility industry financial metric, this is an extremely affordable financial plan. And like I said, it helps address some of your critical capital needs.
And I guess to get to the place you wanted to get in the out years, I guess it's 2031 is where you were saying we were going to be in the best range. The 12, 12, 12, 6, 6 you're proposing there are other ways to slice that, I guess, to get there. If you wanted to do less in the front end and more on the back end, that could all be squeezed to get to the same place. Or is this just the optimal thing that you determined?
I'm as a rate consultant, I'm not one of the principles we have as rate consultants is don't make things harder than they need to be, because I don't get any kind of pleasure by recommending adjustments. You definitely get a benefit from more adjustments up front, because of the time value of money. So if you do defer more adjustments, you would have less cash at the end, which would just would mean that you'd have to raise rates even more in the future. So in general, I try and put my best foot forward in front of governing bodies, because like I said, I'm not a glutton for punishment, or it doesn't give me any pleasure to recommend the need for rate adjustments. But I think that for the expenditure needs that and the timing that was presented to me of the capital improvement program, this is probably the best option.
And to help put that in real terms that we understand from going over the capital budget, what this does is allows us to finance those big capital improvements we talked about on the water side and some of the septic sewer. But it also gives us cash on hand up front to do some of the smaller projects like we can do with cash, like Lift Station 7 was, we didn't have to finance that because we had cash on hand. So as if you'll remember, some of the lift station projects we have in the near future are some of our smaller lift stations, 1A, 2, that we'll be able to fund with cash on hand. If we don't have that cash on hand, then those would either get deferred or we'd have to finance those over a longer period of time, which doesn't make sense because they're just upgrades to those. So when we went through this, we tried to strike that balance to have enough cash on hand to do some of the smaller projects, but still be able to have that money available to be able to borrow and show those financial institutions that we have the capacity to do those. So we've got a lot on our plate on the water and sewer side. That's no secret. We talked very frankly about that during the utility fund workshop. And this is what conservatively as we can gets us to getting those projects done.
Okay. So any other questions for Mr. Mance?
Yeah, I've got one. The 5,000 gallons, is that like a average Maitland customer?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that,
For single family residential
yeah,
homes.
okay. All right.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, Brian. Mr. Mance?
And so my question for you is just the question we were just talking about is timing. Would you like me to prepare the ordinance and bring that forward? Because Jerry and I can work on that for the next meeting if you'd like us to.
Yeah, I definitely think that we need to start looking at hard numbers and making some decisions so we can get this. You know, nobody likes rate increases. None of us do. But at the same time, I think we've kicked this can down the road, so to speak, for many years. And we've got to start correcting some of these deficiencies in our system that we don't see, the residents don't see, but are critical. And so we don't have a catastrophic failure later on. So I think this seems pretty conservative approach to that end game.
Okay. Yep. I think that seems to be the head bob.
Okay.
Okay. All right. On to old business. Mark, is there any old business to report?
No, sir.
Okay. We have a consent agenda. Does anybody on council wish to remove any items from the consent agenda? Okay. Does anybody from the public wish to comment on consent agenda items 2 through 6? All right. Seeing none, let's close the public comment period and a motion would be in order.
I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second,
We have a motion and a second. Lori, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Givens,
Aye.
Councilmember Shaney,
aye.
Councilmember French,
Aye.
Councilmember Randolph,
Aye.
Mayor Lowndes.
Aye. Okay, we've adopted the consent agenda. Let's go to the public period, where any member of the public wishes to address council. And there's a eager taker right there, but we have a couple up here as well. So sorry, Vance, we'll get to you. All right, Mr. John Kaiser.
You're not John Kaiser.
I'm not. You had to leave, but
All right.
he was chief, that's a gift to the city.
All right. Is this a receipt there for that? All right.
Did
Oh,
that
okay.
last night.
All right. All right. Here we go.
That's a gift.
Well, thank you, Mr. Kaiser. And Wilder Reich. I should have gotten this because I recognized the name. Welcome back.
Thank you.
We're glad you're here.
Just give me one moment. Well, before I start, I just wanted to say congratulations. I saw that you won the Democratic primary for Senate, so that was really cool.
Thank you.
Okay. So Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Wilder Reich. It's good to see you again. And I'm here to follow up on the bike infrastructure that I talked about last city council meeting. I'm asking the city to install hawk beacons at 2 intersections that I believe are putting people in real danger. Maitland Avenue and George Avenue and US 1792 at East Sibelia Avenue. And I have a little, some papers that I can give out.
Yeah, sure. You can bring them up to the city clerk and she'll take care of them for you. Right here you go. There we go. It's all right. Thank you.
I brought 6, so some people may have to share.
Okay.
So sorry. So I'll wait.
We'll give you some stoppage time.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
May I continue?
Please do.
Okay. So what you're looking at is a hawk beacon, and so it is a pedestrian activated crosswalk signal, and it stays dark until somebody hits the button at the crosswalk. Then it runs through a yellow to red sequence that legally stops traffic the same way that a normal light would do. Before going dark again once the pedestrian is crossed. And this isn't a new or an experimental idea. I know it kind of looks like just a weird signal, traffic signal, but the Federal Highway Administration did research on this, and it cut pedestrian crashes by 69%. That's the level of protection both of these locations are missing. So I'll start off with Maitland Avenue and George Avenue. That intersection. There's no painted crosswalk there, and it's just a narrow concrete median standing between pedestrians and oncoming traffic. And this location was flagged in the 2026 Downtown Maitland Traffic Study by West 2 News. And it showed that 138 crashes, including 1 fatality, on the stretch of Maitland Avenue alone in Maitland. And this is the exact thing, intersection that the Independence Lane extension the council just approved on is going to dead end to. The city's own project documentation for that extension says its purpose is to give pedestrians a safer route than crossing the busy Highway 1792 or Maitland Avenue. In other words, the city of Maitland has already told us this crossing is dangerous, and a hawk beacon here wouldn't be a new ask. It would finish a project the city already started. And at 1792 in East Sibelia, this intersection sees regular foot traffic, and I can hand where that is out to, if I can.
Is that the intersection by Cappy's you're talking about?
Yeah,
Intersection
the
by-
Cappy's, like, Publix area. This is it. So that intersection sees regular foot traffic from people walking to the 7-Eleven and the Grain and Berry and all those other great businesses. But 1792 is very wide, it's fast, and it offers pedestrians no protected way across. And that gap recently contributed to a fatal hit and run. This spot also sits between Independence Lane and the Sunrail station. And riders getting off the train have no safe way to reach those businesses in Independence Lane. And fixing that would help Sunrail ridership, which is currently the lowest. The Maitland station is currently the lowest in all of Orange County. And the businesses that the corridor is supposed to be supporting, it's not. So it's worth noting back in 2013, there was a slideshow that I found that showed the city of Maitland having a type of crosswalk, but it really never got put in. And a hawk beacon wouldn't replace that, but it would essentially deliver what it needs. And both of these intersections already have a fatality on record. So I'm asking the council to evaluate both for hawk beacon signals and to report back on cost and funding options like the FDOT's Highway Safety Improvement Program and the Maitland Vision Zero. And I'd also ask for a realistic timeline. This shouldn't wait for a future planning cycle. Someone already has died at these intersections, and I don't think we should wait for a third before we act. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Wilder. Just so I'm clear, you're at 1792 in Sibelia. there's a light there currently, right? So so the hot beacon is in addition to that light?
So that would be is replacing it with one of the hawk beacons, and the reason why I've personally been there at that intersection, it takes very long to cross it, and it's a danger to pedestrians. So the hawk beacon would provide pedestrians an efficient way to get across the road and a safer way by maybe even adding a median, which would be, or like, I don't know what it's called, but like an area for the pedestrians to kind of have like safety.
Pedestrian
from all the
refuge.
traffic. Refuge. Thank you, sir. That's it.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for listening.
Sure.
I think we have a future transportation engineer. in the
We
making.
do have one.
I think we have a future mayor.
Give our regards to your brother. Okay, oh, your brother, a sister as well. So that does it for our current cards, and I guess, Mr. Guthrie, are you?
Yeah, I thought it went out. A little late, didn't it? I just put it up here again later.
Okay.
Who are you?
My name's Vance Guthrie, 1504 Druid Isle Road. I came in tonight to talk about the TDT. It was finalized. I think everybody's seen it. When I came to y'all before, I talked about how I was really adamant right off the start of the meeting to take some of this money and put it into more transportation than getting employees to these jobs and getting people from the airport to the tourist areas and extending the train. So, you know, I didn't know how big that was, how much support. I think the only people out of the 32 people we had on that task force were those that were representatives of the associations around International Drive. So, but everybody else really came on and voted for us to recommend to the Orange County Commissioners to send somebody to the state and, you know, adamantly, if approved by the commission, which it will, it has a lot of support, but go up there and adamantly just, you know, sell that money being used on tourism. I want to keep this short because I want to talk what Brian said too, but if anybody has any questions, please reach out to me. I'm happy to go over it, but it was great. I think what I heard that was the greatest was somebody said, we've funded the Civic Center for 50 years. We don't need to fund it. We need to reinvest in our transportation. It would have brought up 0.025% tourism to the area, and we would have spent close to $1 billion. So, but I wanted just to also talk on Brian's presentation. Guys, up there it said 40 years. It's not 40. My street's almost 70. It was built in the late 50s. So you can do the math. And it's a 2-inch galvanized pipe that in the last year, we've been on 3 boil water notices. And those each last 3 days. So this is not 10 years past due. This is not 20 years past due. This is 30 years past due. So many councils have been trying to get this going and drive this. And now it's in your laps. And I'm going to tell you, don't play around with it. Let's get it done. I mean, this is way past due. Also on my way out, I want to say congratulations, Mayor, on your victory. And congratulations, Vice Mayor. So we're soon to be mayor. So thank you all very much.
All right. Thank you, Vance. And also thank you for service on the TDT task force. Sounds like your representation was very effective for the city, and it was along with others as well. So thanks. Okay. Anybody else for public comment period? Anybody at all? All right. Seeing none, let's close the public comment period and get into decisions for the evening. First reading of ordinance number 1460. Lori, would you please read the ordinance title?
Ordinance number 1460, an ordinance of the city of Maitland, Florida, amending the 2050 CDP by amending the future land use element standard 1.1.3.9C to allow within the RMORC category one separate drive-through, automatic teller window, ATM, in addition to one drive-through establishment currently allowed within this CDP, subject to location and square footage limitations.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Daniels, would you like to introduce the item?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. Mike Daniels with the Community Development Department. Here to present staff comments regarding Ordinance 1460 regarding the number of permitted number of drive-through businesses allowed within the Maitland Concourse North comprehensive plan or comprehensive development plan. The site area that we're looking at is Lot 1 within Maitland Concourse North. It's bounded by Trelago Way to the west, the multifamily to the north, basically Maitland Boulevard to the south, and Lake Faith Drive to the east. To give you a little bit of background on the Maitland Concourse North area of special consideration within the comprehensive plan. It was first adopted in 2013, and there were specific policies designed to ensure that, that the Maitland Concourse North development was compatible with the surrounding area. And specifically within Lot 1, they looked at specific uses such as drive-through establishments and determined that they would be prohibited within Maitland Concourse North. Again, they were looking at having a land use pattern that was more pedestrian friendly as opposed to more vehicular oriented uses. In 2016, Ordinance 1303 was passed, which established the PD for MCN and further articulated the design requirements in terms of meeting the residential pedestrian scale requirements. In February of 2022, an Ordinance 1395 was adopted, which amended the comprehensive plan and revised the requirement regarding drive-through establishments to allow one drive-through lane or one drive-through establishment within 300 feet of Trelago Way. There was a lot of debate, a lot of discussion regarding that amendment. Ultimately, the compromise, I think initially the applicant applied for 3 drive-through establishments. That the ultimate compromise was reached to go down to 1 establishment that was within 300 feet of Trelago Way. Subsequent to that, ordinance number 1404 was passed regarding showing the conceptual site layout for the PD plan. Then in 2023, the site plan was approved. In 2025, there was a minor deviation from the plan development, which showed that essentially the stacking for the drive-through lane would extend around building 3 to connect to building 2 to provide more stacking distance. And then in October of 2025, the site construction permit for Maitland Concourse North was approved. Since that time, the applicant applied to make an amendment to the comprehensive plan, requesting additional drive-through lanes. Initially, they had a neighborhood meeting in May of 2026. And subsequent to that, then they applied to make the amendment to revise the comprehensive plan to add an additional drive-through lane with specific restrictions that I'll get into. Here's the approved site construction permit. This is for the first 4 buildings within Lot 1. They are also proposing Lot 5 as well, but the initial site construction permit was approved for 4 buildings. The drive-through lane with the minor deviation that I discussed in the background is showing that the stacking would come around building 3 and then over to building 2 in this area. Now, the existing CDP standard, as I mentioned, does allow for 1 drive-through establishment, with a maximum interior square footage not to exceed 5,000 square feet and allowed within the west 300 feet of Lot 1. Gasoline stations and with or without convenience stores and industrial uses are still prohibited. And there's also specific language about getting the PD approved. They have done that, so the last couple sentences no longer apply because they have complied with that requirement. The applicant is proposing to change this requirement to state that they're allowed one drive-through establishment and one separate drive-through establishment that would be specifically an automatic teller for an ATM. Now, they would keep the same square footage with a maximum required square footage of 5,000 square feet, but they are requesting to amend the location of the stacking to go to now 450 feet from, from Trelago Way or from the western portion of Lot 1. Now, this slide is from the applicant's PowerPoint, which they'll go into more detail during their presentation. I do want to emphasize that this is just an illustration. Anything that would be approved would need to be reviewed and approved and make sure to comply with all the requirements of city code. But just to give you a general idea, what the applicant is proposing is that their ATM machine would be located here at Building 2. And then they're proposing that a drive-through establishment would be located here at Building 4. So this line here is showing that the new line they're proposing would be 450 feet away from the western portion of Lot 1, as opposed to 300, which is what it's showing currently. Now, if council does recommend approval, the initial step would be for council to recommend approval of the first reading of the ordinance, as well as transmitting the proposed amendment to the State Land Planning Agency for review. The state will then review it. They will then return it back to the city with any comments, particularly what they're looking at is any impact that they have on in-state facilities. Once they do that, it'll come back to the city and it'll come back before the board for adoption. The next step after that, again, if council decides to approve the recommendation, would be then to come in and amend their plan development. Then they would have to amend their site construction plan, and then they would have to revise their building permit. Now, staff is recommending that the city move to deny the transmittal of the request to the State Land Planning Agency and the first reading due to inconsistency with future land use policy 1.1.3. The reasoning behind that is, as I mentioned during the background, whether in 2013, when the initial approval of the policy was put in place to completely prohibit drive-through uses, or when it was amended in 2022, this was a very intentional requirement. And when it was amended in 2022, as I said, initially the applicant had proposed 3. A compromise was reached between the applicant and eventually city council to approve only 1 drive-through establishment with the specific requirement of the 300 feet. So from staff standpoint, this is an issue that's been debated and a compromise was reached and it's a settled issue. In addition to that, I think the concern is when you constantly sort of chip away at the requirement, it sort of takes away from the original intent of the policy, which was to require pedestrian-friendly uses at this location. Having said that, the plan was initially taken to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and the Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend 3-0 to approve the requested amendment. And another point to bring up is, unlike many of the previous public meetings that we have had on this topic, there hasn't been objection from the surrounding area, whether at the neighborhood meeting or at the Planning Commission. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Daniels?
I think I'll go first. If you could just elaborate on when you said there hasn't been, and I'll repeat, has not been objection during the current review, either at the planning and zoning meeting or the neighborhood meeting? Could you elaborate on that a little bit more? Like what was done to explain it to the neighboring folks, and then what was the discussion?
Well, so at the planning commission, there was no neighborhood involvement, so there wasn't anyone that spoke at all on the project. Now, we did have the neighborhood meeting back in February. It wasn't heavily attended. There were a few folks that attended. A few different issues were brought up. There was a discussion a little bit about pedestrian connectivity. But for the most part, the applicant was able to explain essentially how they were providing pedestrian access. And again, there wasn't any strong opposition to that. Some of the other issues that were brought up were more about, the vehicular right turning movement at Lake Faith, where initially I think they had a full access point. So it's a state road. So they ended up making that a directional turn. But, again, there wasn't, unlike, I provided it in the packet, the previous neighborhood meeting where there was more specific opposition, that wasn't the case at the meetings that we've gotten, nor have I gotten specific letters or anything specifically talking about objection to the project.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
I guess I've seen this in the past where, the current no opposition comes out, but there's an expectation by the people that came out before that we would follow through with what we intended to do, and that was one drive-through. So even though they may not have been at this public meeting, their opposition may still be out there. I wouldn't discount it.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Daniels before we go to the applicant? Okay, the applicant's representative, certainly. Come on up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Mickey Grindstaff. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Schutz & Bowen, 300 South Orange Avenue, Suite 1600, Orlando, 32801, here tonight on behalf of the applicant. And in general, we agree with the summary of the presentation by Mike. However, there are a couple points I'd like to highlight that are different, and we certainly disagree with the staff's recommendation of denial, and I'd like to elaborate on all of that. He did mention that the approval, his chronological description was correct. The approval of the initial one drive-through was for a total of 5,000 square feet. Some of you may be in the audience, or I think, Mayor, you might have been here when the original discussion contemplated a pretty intense user at that corner, like a Starbucks. And there was all sorts of concern about what was going to happen with Starbucks in the morning, that sort of thing. And the applicant was targeting Starbucks. And that was a fair discussion. And so there was a total of 5,000 square feet within 300 feet approved, and there's no doubt about that. Of the 5,000 square feet, then we're now proposing not more than 5,000 square feet, just put it in two different places. The building that is per plan for lot 1 is 2,838 square feet, and then the facility in building 4, which would be the interior drive-through, would be up to 2,164 square feet. The targeted tenant there is the hometown Foxtail Coffee craft coffee shop. What was something that's very important to note, and when we'll get into, our engineer, Mr. Martin, will be here just a second. We'll elaborate on our site plan. In the before, the 5,000 square feet was expected to generate, and this is important, very important, generate up to 3,000 3,003 trips per day. In the after, with the two separate facilities, smaller than the one single facility, the total traffic is 1,574, which is a 48% decrease in traffic. 48% decrease in overall traffic. In the AM peak hours, that's 427 trips in the morning, 212 trips in the after, for a total reduction of 50%. In the PM peak, we're looking at 195 trips in the before, 143 trips in the after, for a 27% reduction. So the overall reduction in traffic, which was, I think, the biggest concern in the original approval, was traffic, congestion, and the unknown. In the before, you're looking at, well, in the after, you're looking at a 48% reduction in overall traffic. Commissioner Randolph, I agree with you, and with neighbors and the neighborhood participation. There were two neighbors that came out to the neighborhood meeting on May 21st. And then there were no one here for the P&Z meeting the other night. The two neighbors that were at the neighborhood meeting spoke favorably. One of them was adamantly opposed to everything we did at Trey Lago, and I've been involved in that project since the beginning. And I believe, I don't know this, but I believe that the idea of a Foxtail Coffee being within walking distance of the neighborhood, particularly Lake Faith Villas, is appealing to the neighbors. An overall trip reduction of 48% is appealing to the neighbors. I know from personal experience, and Vance can attest to this as well, that the community participation in Maitland is very robust when they're adamantly opposed to something. Very robust. They're not shy. And I'm not asking to say that they're not here, therefore there's a vote in favor. But I would like for you to factor that in, that they're not shy when they're adamantly opposed or even slightly opposed, that they're not reluctant to come out and state that position. And that's what they should do. The Foxtail Coffee, we believe, is a fair-headed neighborhood, homegrown coffee shop that people like and can walk to it. And we think that that's in the inside and the interior is appealing to the overall neighborhood. Mr. Martin will speak to the pedestrian activity and the pedestrian crosswalks and that line of sight and the site plan. And overall, we believe this is a net improvement to the PD from a synergy tenant mix proposal. Staff makes a suggestion that, well, we got to stay in line with the original PD. Respectfully, this is a use that we think is complementary to the PD. And recently, staff was in support of changing the whole entire use on Lot 6, the whole use from office, pretty intense office, to the townhome project, which I'm not quarreling with. I'm just simply saying that's an interesting position when they want to stay the course with our interior retail design, which is in fact a retail use in the Foxtail Coffee. We believe this is a high quality project. It's been years in the making. We're getting close to seeing it, and we'd appreciate your support. I'd like Mr. Martin to come speak to the pedestrian connectivity and line of sight. John.
Good evening, Jonathan Martin with Kimley Horn Associates, 200 South Orange Avenue, Suite 600, 32803, Orlando. So I want to take you through the presentation that we shared to the residents as well as at the P&Z meeting, I believe. I was not there, but I understood that we covered this. Wanted to kind of take you through the history and some of the understanding. We definitely feel that the effort that the applicant is doing on the buildings, the architecture, it's going to be a top-notch addition to what's out there. And also, really, as you're coming into Maitland after I-4, it's going to be well received by the community. Again, I think we had showed clearly where the overall site's located. And this really affects the interior buildings. So just to recap, this was the existing Pinnacle Bank's going to go here, and their plans are in right now for approval. And then Foxtail will go here. One thing interesting about Foxtail too is that they're open from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. So while the traffic study uses ITE, which is probably more of a Starbucks comparison, they're closed at 6 o'clock. So that even the parking that's available for other restaurant uses and stuff will be available in the evening, will be in the evening for the overall project. So again, one thing I want to answer, talk about here is that it is an ATM. And I would say in a location like this, my professional opinion, you can look at different studies, but it's about 1 per hour. So we're talking about 1 car driving up per hour. And realistically, over time, as we get away from cash, it's probably going to be less than that, down to 10 or so per day. And this is a pull-up window. We left the drive stacking here, but it was more from an ease of, it was all permitted, it's designed, the bank was okay with it. It's not stacking. You're gonna have 1 car in here an hour. They're gonna pull up, enter their code, take $20 out and go buy coffee. So we don't feel like this is, in most other jurisdictions, a pull-up ATM would not be considered a drive-through. And I think that's one of the mitigating factors here is that this is not really a drive-through. It's a pull-up ATM that's used at max once per hour. And it's located on the west side of building 2. Want to show the elevation that was currently in review. And again, it's just the ATM is located right here. You pull up, take your money out and drive. There's many reasons why this is safer. You pull up, you don't leave your car, having to park in the parking lot after hours, having to walk up to an ATM with, looking behind your shoulder, looking behind your back. There's many safety reasons that we all know. If my young daughter was coming here, I would prefer her to use a drive-through ATM than using a walk-up ATM that could be here. Again, the elevations. Proceeding. So again, this is a close-up view of what the ATM would look like on the west side of the building. And then the overall site plan again. During the meeting, there was some discussion about whether we would have the order window here or actually located here. Partnering with staff, we talked about removing this location. So this request is no longer valid. We X'd it out. So the updated elevation, I think Mike summarized it well. As we come in for the next step of this after transmittal, and if it is approved down the road, would be the PD. So we would be coming in with the full PD. All these details would be worked out to show you how pedestrian connectivity, safety, and even connection. I think the residents' one concern was, because the project's not built yet, is pedestrian connectivity over to Lake Faith Villas. They want to come here. And again, some of our most adamant folks that were against the project from the beginning, Vicki and I are here with some of you guys and Vance as well, was really supportive. She's excited about the use. It's not a Starbucks. Go drive by. You have a Foxtail right here. It's not a Starbucks. It's not high intensity. As Mickey said, even from mathematically, it's 50% reduction, but it's even going to be further than that. But ITE says based on those uses, this is what is. But realistically, the trips are probably going to be about 20 to 25% of what originally could have been if it was a Starbucks. One thing cool about the bank combined with the coffee shop that's going to close early is that those parking spaces will be available for nicer sit-down restaurants in the evenings and on the weekends compared to the bank just being open during the weekday. Again, we removed this where the order pickup would be on the north side of the building. One thing that's also good about this too is that if there was any noise, would be projecting. Lake Faith Villas may be able to hear. We even addressed that, and we asked them, and they said for the frequency, it really wasn't a concern of theirs. But now with the order on the hard corner, it's even going to be better for the residents, both in apartments and Lake Faith Villas. Skip through that. We're not doing that again. Correct. This is an important part where there's a ton of. We've got a 13-foot pedestrian area out here that's very heavily open. We also made sure that we had a great sight triangle here that when people are leaving, they can see. And then as you look to let me just go back to the overall site plan. This is fine. As you look to the right, this is the bank that's going to be closed for the majority of time. If you really look at the peak hours of coffee, it's 6 a.m. to 8:39. And then you have some afternoon people and maybe some people after lunch, but it's not heavy peak times when the other uses are really hopping, like in the evening for dinner places and things like that. So we think the synergy of time is there. And also, again, this layout, these sight lines are above average. And we actually jetted the building out a little bit further to make sure the sight line is great. And again, looking to the west, you've got full vision. There's not going to be any impairment to pedestrians and/or the vehicular traffic. Again, to reemphasize, this is Foxtail. It's not Starbucks. Go visit a couple locations. You'll see a few cars stacked. It's not like Starbucks. Again, the pickup window is located right here, and we laid this out so it meets city code exactly. So it actually meets all the dimensional criteria, the 10 by 20 spaces, the number of stacking to the order window, as well as the stacking required to enter the drive-through. We don't think we need this many, but we actually meet city code on this layout. This was another example of a site over off Howell Branch Road. We invite you to go look at it. There's actually no stacking and there's no issues with circulation or whatever. You actually pull up and you order right on the hard corner here, like right there. You pull in, you order, and then you pick up and you leave, and it's right in the main drive aisle of the development, and they don't have any issues with stacking or parking. Again, tremendous traffic reduction compared to what a Starbucks. It's interesting. So Alan was very concerned about Starbucks stacking, traffic, impact on the overall quality and walkability of the development. So he went away from that. And Pinnacle was so excited about to come on the site. They signed a 20-year lease. They signed a 20-year lease and they said, hey, we like the idea of a pull-up ATM. There's a lot of safety features of that. So that was locked up and done. And then Foxtail said, we were wanting to talk to you, is there any way to get another or have an actually, drive-through on the project? And we said, let's talk. We had some pre-apps with staff. We went over site plans. And again, our thought was it's a pull-up ATM that's used maybe once per hour. In our layman's, in layman's as well as my professional opinion, I wouldn't really call that a drive-through. So we said, we can ask, when we saw the favorable opinion from the public, and again, to reiterate what Mickey said, we've been here, there is no chance that everybody doesn't know that this is going through, in my opinion. I mean, some of the most vocal people in Lake Faith Villas was at the public meeting, and I'm sure everybody's aware of it. And hopefully some people are here even supportive of it today. Some said they would come in support of it. So there would have been noise. You would have been getting emails if they were concerned about this project. Again, the issue is with going from the 300 feet to the 450 is really just proximity and location. It's still over 1,000 plus feet from any unit. And again, the business side will be on the west side of this building, also shielded from Lake Faith Villas. So we don't think there's any line of sight or worry from Lake Faith Villas. And even Building 5 the existing residential building and Building 5 will pretty much screen this whole activity area from Lake Faith Villas view. This is the overall site plan, just to reiterate. And the reason why we were very careful about putting this wording in here, and Mickey recommended it, is that we didn't want somebody to come in there and say, oh man, they got a drive-through, let's go swap it out now for a different use. No, we specifically put this word in there for your comfort and also to talk about in the future, that it has to be an ATM window. Not a drive-through, an ATM window. So we're talking about a bank pull-up ATM for safety, and we're talking about the addition of the one drive-through, in our opinion, that was previously approved. So in essence, one functioning drive-through, but a little bit further east, just for proximity in the site. And again, some of this was predicated the fact that Pinnacle loved the site so much and loved Maitland so much that they signed a 20-year lease, and it was wrapped up already. Again, to reiterate what Mickey was talking about, half the reduction, and then AM is still half, and then PM, they close at 6. So again, this is a typical Starbucks that's open later in the evening. People are coming in there to get their lattes or I forget what they call it now. They got like Energizer drinks. But the reality is this number is actually much less. But again, we use just published ITE data. We didn't try to, although like I said, I would put a star and asterisk on this because they close at 6 p.m. and these numbers are too high for for Foxtail's use. And that's kind of what we presented to the residents as well as P&Z, and we're here, Mickey and I are here to answer any of your questions.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. Any questions for Mr. Martin or?
What assurances do we have that it is a foxtail going in there, and what would happen if that fell through?
We can talk. I'm not sure. Bill, do we have a lease signed yet with them, or are they waiting on to see if the comp plan gets? Okay. It's a small, the building itself is small, and we're in discussions. They can be here at the next meeting. They couldn't be here tonight, but it's very solid conversations. We want it to be. It's not to say that we would want to put that in the ordinance. You know, things happen. We want the ability to swap it out if for whatever reason they had to leave. So I don't think that we can count on it to be a foxtail forever, but the intention is to 100% to be that. And as well as the square footage that's being allotted to this, the 1,800 square feet, that's fixed forever. They can't increase that building size without coming back to see you.
Well, I guess I was thinking also about the 6 o'clock, the hours and that sort of thing, which were specific to a foxtail operation.
That's fair. Yeah, we probably can't commit that it wouldn't be something else in the future, but it's wholeheartedly, that's the intention right now. And we can have them if you guys so desire to transmit this, we could actually have them present once the state signs off on it to present to you that how negotiations are going in the lease terms.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, so I've been here on council for all this for a long time. So I saw the first iteration come through, and there were no drive-throughs allowed. And I think the developer was on board with that, and came in with that understanding. Then he came in for the change to get 3, as we've explained, and there was a negotiation down to 1. And I think the real issue at that time, every council's different. There are new interpretations and new data come forward and times change. But at that time, I don't think the issue was the number of drive-through. Well, it was the number of drive-through. It wasn't the size of the building that was providing the drive-throughs. I think what the discussion, as I recall 4 years ago, was, we want to make sure that people come here to stay. We want to create a pedestrian-friendly environment where people aren't dodging cars between buildings. We want, people to drive up to get out of their car to go eat and maybe go to another place nearby. And so we wanted to ultimately limit the number of drive-throughs so that this place is known as a more, stationary, I guess, pedestrian-friendly environment. And so we compromised on the 1 coffee drive-through. And so I understand now that the developer has used that drive-through right for the bank instead. And it was that too late that a coffee company came in and wanted to use that drive-through, or he had committed.
That's correct.
Too early to the bank?
That's correct. The bank already signed a lease with the ATM being part of the lease agreement.
Mm-hmm.
And again, in our opinion, an ATM pull-up, while it's in city code, most other jurisdictions don't consider that a drive-through. And there was actually even talk here about changing it, but I'm not sure if that ever made its way through in an LDC update, but there was discussion of updating it so that from a safety perspective, that would not be considered a drive-through.
Right. And the other issue was, we were concerned about the stacking and the amount of traffic that a Starbucks would generate, because that is certainly on the way to, people are going to stop in there and get a coffee on their way to work and pull back out onto Maitland Boulevard and go on their way. So that's just kind of as background. That was the deal. And now we have a different request in front of us now. And I don't know how, this council feels about the wisdom of moving forward with this, or, is the change here, I guess, is the volume of traffic that you're saying is cut by roughly half.
That's right. There's no,
What drives that? Is it really just the square footage or the ability of the kitchen to produce that many things, or is it because Foxtail in particular just has a low drive-through
it is.
rate?
It's craft coffee. They make it one at a time. Like Starbucks is an operation, right? They a lot of online ordering. It's it's just like going to a McDonald's compared to like a smaller drive-through facility. It's craft. It's not intended to be mass volume. It's intended to be higher quality. A better product. I guess that's fair. It depends on your opinion, but yes, it's not intended to be, double drive-throughs, people, it's a lot less volume. And of course the ATM, like we talked about, 1 per hour if we're lucky. So the overall traffic is tremendously less than what originally was approved. And also the stacking, like I said, in where the drive-throughs at now, even from an internal perspective, there's no potential for it to have any adverse impact to anybody. If there was, let's say a car breakdown or something in the drive-through itself, it's in the interior of the site and it'll have no impact on any of the ingress and egress movements surrounding the project in any direction.
Okay. And maybe this isn't a fair question for you because it's not your particular business, but maybe I don't know. So if that size of a shop were to turn into like a hyper efficient burrito place, would the traffic then be expected to increase as well? Or is it really that size of a building just can't produce that much product for people to line up for?
This drive-through was designed to meet city code no matter what use it is. So actually the eight is what the city requires for any drive-through place. So we actually are meeting city code no matter what the use may be in the future. It actually meets the code of the city. So again, that size, you may have like what I've seen is like a Chipotle pickup window. You may have some things, but it's only an 1,800 square foot restaurant. There's not many high volume places that could work on that with an interior service area.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else have questions? So, Mr. Martin? No?
So in my perspective, what we're looking at is we had 0 with no drive-throughs, 0 traffic. And then I see the 3,000 number and I think, well, to me, that's not a real number because it never existed. So I don't really understand how we're 48% less other than just numbers. But I think this is a philosophy that the city adopted about no drive-throughs. It's not just whether we felt pedestrians needed to be safe or not, which was one of the underlying currents of that. But it's the philosophy that we adopted, that we didn't want drive-throughs, we wanted pedestrian safety in these environments. So, I view it as like the city gave them the one drive-through as a compromise when it was none at all. And how they used it, that's their choice. If they used it for the bank, they used it for the bank. Now they're coming back and asking for a second one. And I can understand the perspective that Mr. Martin has that this isn't really a drive-through where the bank is at. But in my mind, a drive-through is something that you pull up in your car and you pull out. That's a drive-through. And so I think this is asking for 2 different drive-throughs. And the other thing is I'm not sure, I'm 100% confident that the geometry will work on that drive-through. That's a design standard thing, but from a pure numbers standpoint, I think they took their bite out of the apple and they got their drive-through.
Okay. Can you back up one more prior to this one? So this is the one that's out on Howell Branch?
Correct. And this is the main thoroughfare for the projects right here. And this is where you enter the drive-through, and it's about 3 to 4 cars is available to be in here. And again, welcome to go out there and look at it. But again, with Foxtail, it's more of a craft beer and craft coffee. It's not like a Starbucks machine where they sell so much product.
Is that the only drive-through in that establishment or that development there? Looks like it.
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions? So before we go to the public on this, does anybody from the public have any? Thank you, gentlemen. Do you have anything else? I'm sorry, I don't want to. Mickey, you want to come? I'm sorry.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. To the extent that the question was asked, do we know this is going to be a Foxtail? I think John touched on it, but I'd like to just elaborate. If if we were fortunate enough tonight to have a vote to transmit, and then we go to Tallahassee, come back between the transmittal and adoption, we could make more progress with Foxtel, have a Foxtel representative here to tell you about it, hopefully tell you about a lease. But if we transmit, this is just transmittal, we would have time before the adoption hearing to perhaps provide you more comfort about Foxtel. And I just would like to, he touched on it, I just wanted to elaborate on it.
I think it's just that there's a very clear characterization of what will go in there or is likely to go in there. And a lot of our thinking about this is based on a particular model, craft coffee. And I don't know that there's anything to prevent this from being, becoming something else, that might not match that same model.
And perhaps between transmittal and adoption, we could address that issue as well, some sort of comfort to the city about the nature of the use.
And I think, Mickey, is what you're saying, that between the transmittal and the adoption, we have to go back through the PD at that point as well. There would be a PD
No, that
coming
would
on
come after adoption.
after adoption, and then we have to marry those two up in order to, so we have several steps in this process yet. Is that okay?
I guess the other issue there is that it might not be a foxtail forever too. So I'm just saying there's a little bit of a, are we talking about this in the abstract or very specifically about one business that may come in now or one that might come in later to replace it? So I just want to think about this in terms of both the principle and the space itself as a drive-through space that could be, look different.
We could explore some use restrictions. I'm just trying to, if we don't transmit, we're dead in water. If we transmit, it doesn't assure success, but it does allow time to address some of these questions that are valid and legitimate.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Let's go to the public on this. Does anybody from the public have any comment on this item? You do, please. Come on up.
All right.
Okay. Again, Vance Guthrie, 1504 Druid Isle Road. So I have informed the Druid area about this, and they wanted to come out, and I said, listen, you don't have to. I'll go represent you guys. So this is known. And so for those that don't know, this history goes back to 2013, and I have to say that I have the most respect for what these two do. They're the best in the area. I mean, Mr. Grindstaff, Mr. Martin, we've known each other now with this one project since 2013. This is going on. I just see things different. Okay. The one thing is, when this happened, this goes all the way back to 1980, and it starts in 1980, and it was supposed to be single family housing. And then it went all the way to the state, and they made a ruling, but that time died. And then they came back, did a change on the use. Okay. And in 2015, you get the uses that you have today. And the people, the citizens, were guaranteed at that time that there'd be no drive-throughs, 0 drive-throughs. And then it comes to council a few years back, and 3 of the 5 members decided for a drive-through. So now what we were promised has already been pulled back from us. Okay. And that council 4 years ago said only 1 drive-through. That's it. Lot 2 doesn't have any, just 1, because we want to see something come through here. And, I was one of the 2 that voted against the drive-through. So now they're approaching to say, oh, okay, we have 2. So it's up to you guys. Are y'all going to pull that back and break that promise that the prior council already told us. So it's up to you. And I think, Mr. French, you have it right. You have to look into the future, okay? That building's going to be there for 40 years. What's it going to be in 10 years? What's it going to be in 15 years? Is lot 2 going to want to drive through sometime? I think when the developer came in, he said, he's retiring. This is it. This is his last one. This is his piece. There is all stalls, right? The best thing he's ever going to do. Well, words like stacking, drive-throughs, that doesn't tell me that that's the best top quality project in the world. So I just want to put it in your hands. And again, gentlemen, thank you. It's always been an honor knowing you. And I hope this is the last time we ever meet up here. But thank you for your consideration and all y'all do. Cliff, you were there too since 2000. So been a long time.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Guthrie. Anybody else have a comment on this? Okay, let's close the public comment period and bring it back to council for further discussion and a motion. Does anybody have any discussion on this item?
Yeah, again, I think, I've lived in the city for a long time, been involved in all these projects and heard a lot of things. And again, the city has made promises to the citizens that every once in a while gets chipped away. And I agree with Mr. Guthrie in that a lot of promises were made and now we're going again, chipping away. And I looked at the minutes from those last council meetings and I did see that it was a 3-2 vote. So it wasn't 100% endorsement that even one drive-through was necessary. So I'm going to make a motion to deny this and go along with staff's recommendation that we move to deny transmittal of request to State Land Planning Agency and denial of first reading ordinance number 1460 amending the 2050 Comprehensive Development Plan CDP due to inconsistency with future land use policy 1.1.3.
Okay.
I'll second that. I'm not inclined to go against the original philosophy of what they were doing over there. I wasn't around then, but I just don't feel that I can do that, go against what was originally promised.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Lori, would you call the roll?
Councilmember French,
Aye.
Councilmember Givens,
Aye.
Councilmember Randolph,
Aye.
Councilmember Shaney,
Aye.
Mayor Lowndes.
Aye. Okay, thank you all for coming out. All right. We're on to next item, which is Domrick Drive Culvert and Lift Station. Is that right? No, I'm sorry. We're skipping over ordinance number 1461. Lori, would you please read the ordinance title?
Ordinance number 1461, an ordinance of the city of Maitland, Florida, amending the land development code to allow for greater housing diversification, opportunities for properties located in the downtown Maitland zoning district, amend section 4.2.2 principal use table for the category of household living to amend list of permitted uses to allow dwelling 3-family and dwelling 4-family as permitted uses in downtown Maitland zoning district, amend section 4.2.4B1A-B to amend restrictions for existing single-family homes and duplexes in downtown Maitland DM zoning district, amend section 4.2.4B1C through E to revise development requirements for dwellings 3-family and dwelling 4-family and multifamily dwellings, provide for conflict, severability, codification, and setting an effective date.
Okay, thank you, Lori. Mr. Daniels, would you like to introduce this item?
Yes, Mike Daniels again, here to present staff comments regarding ordinance 1461 regarding revisions to the downtown Maitland zoning district for small lot development. We had brought this up informally to city council at the June 8th meeting. through discussions that we had with our planning commission, they had recommended that we look at making changes to the existing requirements in the downtown Maitland district regarding small lot development. Particularly, there were two areas that we looked at. Number one, the current restrictions on existing single-family and two-family dwellings. And then the second requirement was the mixed-use requirement for multifamily dwellings, which for this ordinance, it also would include triplexes and quadplexes. So, the changes we're proposing for single-family and two-family dwellings are currently in the downtown zoning district. Single-family and two-family uses are not permitted. However, if there are existing single-family and two-family homes, then they are allowed to continue. They can be repaired, remodeled, but they can't be enlarged. And one of the issues, particularly in the southern portion of the DM zoning district, is you have a lot of very small small buildings. So if they wanted to come in and tear down their existing house and build a new house, but it's 50 feet larger than the previous house, well, technically they wouldn't be in compliance with the code. So what we're looking at changing is saying it can be redeveloped as long as they meet the standards of the RSFD zoning district, and they meet specific requirements regarding frontage and build-to lines within the DM district. Now, the reason we're specifically looking at standards in the RSFD district is because, as I mentioned, in the DM district, we don't have regulations specifically for single family and two family. The reason we thought RSFD made the most sense is that's the zoning district that have, the smallest lots, that's more conducive with urban development. So what we put in the requirement is that they have to meet the requirements of RSFD. And in addition to that they meet the build-to requirements for the DM zone. So unlike other zoning districts, which have a minimum setback in the downtown, which is, more form-based, we have specific build-to lines. So they'd still have to meet that build-to line requirement. But in terms of all the other requirements, they would have to comply in terms of lot area, lot width, height, all of that. They'd have to comply with the RSFD district. In addition to that, there are specific public frontage standards that are required in the DM district. So even though they would be single family or two family, they'd still have to meet those frontage standards. So again, the reason for that is still trying to create that uniformity within that DM zoning district. The other change that we looked at was the requirement that for multifamily, and like I said, that would also for this, for this ordinance would also include triplexes and quadplexes. We have a requirement that for multifamily development in the downtown district, you have to have ground floor retail. So, that makes sense. We want to create an active, on the ground floor, we want to create an active pedestrian area. However, in cases where you have very small lots, it may not be feasible or practical to be able to have first floor retail, have residential on top, and still meet, the parking requirements, drainage, et cetera. So we made an exception that if you have lots that are smaller than 20,000 square feet, or on a type 2 or type 3 street, except for Independence Lane, which I'll explain in a second, and you comply with all the other requirements of the downtown Maitland zoning district, that you could be approved. So that would be the same requirements that we would have for the multifamily district as well, multifamily dwellings as well. Now, the reason we specifically called out the street type 1 and Independence Lane and street type 2 is we do want to ensure that for projects that are located on 1792 or on Horatio, east of Orlando Avenue, there we don't want to see ground floor retail. That just wouldn't make sense. However, in the other streets, except for Independence Lane, because again, all that the city is invested in Independence Lane, again, we want to create that mixed use pattern. But on all the other streets, whether it's type 2 street, which are predominantly smaller mixed use streets in the DM zoning district, and type 3, which tend to be more residential streets, on those streets, they would be allowed. So again, we looked at all of the parcels that would be eligible within the DM zoning district. As you can see, there are some right in this area, the random ratio. Many of them are in the southern portion around Circle Drive and in the Ridgewood Avenue area. But it would potentially affect up to 67 parcels currently in the downtown. So with that, this was taken to Planning and Zoning Commission on August 6th, and it was unanimously approved. Staff is recommending approval. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, any questions of Mike?
I like this plan. I just wonder, is there any downside? Do you get any kind of pushback from any constituency about this?
I think the one area, and we talked about this a little bit June 8th, I think the one area to look at would be in this area. I think some of the language that was put in place, especially regarding existing single family and two family, the idea was to try to maintain the character of those areas. So you wanted to keep kind of smaller housing in that area. To me, the problem that I see with that is that if you wanted to create something where you can kind of keep that character, that would really be more of a historic district. That would really apply. But in this case, it's very arbitrary to say, if somebody has an 800 square foot house, somebody else has a 900 square foot house, well, the 800 square foot house can't enlarge because of our code. So to me, without going to that step, it makes sense. But that would be the area because that is predominantly residential, even though it is a downtown Maitland. So those areas, you could see more multifamily or at least potentially 3 or 4 unit development.
So is it possible that if for some reason an area like that, it became apparent that this is not appropriate for it, could we carve it out later, or could we address that?
I mean, certainly we could
if we needed to, or wanted to.
One of the caveats too that I want to point out is that right now we do allow townhomes on those lots. So even though we don't allow multifamily, we're really talking about rental units or non-walk-ups.
Right.
So we already allow townhomes, so there's already a portion of what I would consider multifamily already allowed. So again, when you look at those factors, I didn't think it was a major factor that would really have a major character change. But certainly if we needed to revisit it and add additional requirements, that's something we could look at. But again, I think there is a benefit because I think there are a lot of lots that really, you're creating potential issues where you're really making them very, very difficult to have them develop at all. And as a result, they stay vacant.
Thanks.
As I recall, this discussion really centered around the fact that our larger lots are disappearing and we've got these smaller postage stamp lots. And we're not getting cooperation between property owners to assemble lots to make bigger lots. And so this is a mechanism to solve that problem. Not to say we have a bunch of people standing in line waiting for it to happen, but it gives more opportunity for them to redevelop their lots.
Yeah. And another point that was discussed, especially at PNC, is the idea of providing more, different types of residential in the downtown. Again, even though we currently allow condos or townhomes, this would allow for a different product downtown on some of the smaller lots to hopefully increase our housing supply.
Okay, anybody else? All right, let's hear from the public on this. Does anybody from the public have any comment on this item? Okay, let's close the public comment period and bring it back for discussion and a motion.
I guess I'll move unless somebody else was reaching to do so. I move that we adopt on first reading ordinance number 1461, amending the land development code requirements for the downtown Maitland zoning district as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, Lori, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Randolph,
Aye.
Councilmember Givens,
Aye.
Councilmember French,
Aye.
Councilmember Shaney,
Aye.
Mayor Lowndes.
Aye. Okay, we passed on first reading. Now we're on to the Dominic Drive culvert and lift station resiliency. Mark, would you please introduce this item?
Sure, just briefly, as you all know, over the last couple years, we've shifted our focus on, from a stormwater perspective, from water quality projects to flooding process. This comes on the heels of Hurricane Ian, where it was clearly demonstrated there are some areas of the city during extremely heavy rain events that are inundated that create public safety problems from the perspective of access. Also create public health issues because these areas also intersect with vulnerable areas of our sewer system. And then of course create flooding issues. So we've prioritized those areas into projects within our stormwater capital plan. The first of those is the Dominic Drive, Lake of the Woods Creek area, where the bridge, the stormwater structure with the road on top was overtopped, creating problems getting into the Oak subdivision, which could not be accessed during the storm event. There was flooding in the area, and we were unable to keep the lift station, which is lift station 2, down at the bottom of the hill under power because we had to pull the portable generator because of the flooding. So we took a look at that area to try to address these issues. And this is the point in time where we've done that initial analysis, which is basically the feasibility study, and reached a decision point on whether to move forward or not. The feasibility is done. There are 2 alternatives that we boiled down that Jason's going to get into in a second. This is the point where we make a decision on what to move forward, if we're going to move forward, and if we are going to move forward, what road we're going to take. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Jason Warren. He's one of our consulting engineers with Burgess & Nyepel, who's been working with us on this project to give you a short presentation. So Jason, it's all yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, City Council members. I appreciate the opportunity to discuss the project here. As Mark mentioned, my name is Jason Warren. I work with Burgess & Nyepel. I am our One Water Group Director here. And we're going to be discussing the Dominic Drive flooding evaluation. Mark pretty much just gave you my presentation. That was most of what I'm going to tell you anyway. So he set the stage really well. But what I want to start with is why we're here. And so really this goes back to Hurricane Ian in 2022. I'm sure everybody remembers that event. Really what it exposed is some pieces of infrastructure within the city that may be vulnerable to these large storm events. So this particular storm event identified 3 challenges that we wanted to see if we could address. So I've got a couple pictures on the slide here. I know, I apologize, they're hard to see some of them. But number 1 is there's a couple culverts that are underneath Dominic Drive. Culverts. They're just pipes bringing water from one side to the other. These culverts did not have adequate capacity to be able to convey the amount of flow that was coming through the creek. So we ended up having roadway overtopping or roadway flooding that occurred during this event. What also occurred during this event, lift stations very commonly fail during hurricane events. The power goes out. We need backup power systems to be able to keep the wastewater system running. The city was able to get the generator there, but they couldn't safely operate that portable generator after power was lost. And that caused sanitary sewer overflows in the area. And last but not least, this is the single point of access to the Oak subdivision. And because there was that large amount of flooding that occurred, that access for normal pedestrian vehicles was cut off. You weren't able to get in and out of that neighborhood. So that's why we're here today, is Hurricane Ian exposed some of that vulnerability. So the project area as a whole, when we look at these studies, we have to look at the entire basin that contributes to the stormwater tributary. So it's not just that culvert itself. It's not just the creek itself. There's actually 116 acres of land that flow into this basin. And that basin really starts at Lake of the Woods up in Seminole County. It flows through the creek and into Lake Minnehaha. Our study was focused on that conveyance through the creek between the two lakes. It's about a half-mile long. And really the particular focus point is that Domerick Drive crossing where those culverts are, which is about 215 feet upstream of Lake Minnehaha. So it's important to understand this is at the very end of that conveyance structure. So just a little bit of background in how the evaluation was performed. We built a hydraulic model using Stormwise. It's a normal software that's used for this type of evaluation. And we input information into it that's some readily available and some we did detailed analysis to obtain. So the state has topography that we were able to get from state LiDAR data. That was our initial basis for understanding elevations in the area, but we were primarily focused on detailed information of that canal system and of the Domerick Drive crossing. So we had a surveyor go out and get survey grade information to the 100th of a foot that we could input into the model to truly simulate what's going on at Domerick Drive and at 100-foot increments up that canal. We input soil information, land use. These are from national databases. And what this helps us understand is within that 116-acre basin, how long is it taking for the rain at the furthest parts of that basin to make its way into the lakes and the conveyance structure and ultimately get to Domerick Drive? We looked at a couple different rainfall events. Number one was the 100-year 24-hour storm event, and that is a design storm event that the city staff elected to look at as a design storm for this project. Now, a traditional storm for infrastructure this size may be designed to a 10-year storm. So we really went, I'd say, pretty far beyond what a traditional storm event would be for designing this type of infrastructure. And that was set as the design storm. We also looked at the rainfall from Hurricane Ian. Hurricane Ian, the most severe rainfall in recorded history in Central Florida. So we looked back at the rainfall that occurred during that event so that we could check and make sure that our model was giving accurate results. And then also we solicited field input. So we wanted to understand from the operators, from the City of Maitland staff who were having to deal with events during that storm, what did they see? How severe was the flooding? Are we accurately representing what occurred during that event? And so what we're able to see here, this is the existing conditions model. So we took the information, the detailed survey information, the anecdotes from city staff, and we were able to calibrate our model against the 100-year floodplain information that FEMA has. So that 100-year storm event, calibrating it against the FEMA data. And what we saw is during that 100-year storm event, the peak stage just means that highest elevation that the water level gets to during a storm event, reached up to 69.8 feet during that 100-year 24-hour design storm, which that is a little over half a foot above the roadway itself. And during Hurricane Ian, it got over 70.1 feet. So even further above that roadway, getting to about 10 inches of flooding. And what I'll note here, and I'm going to talk more about in a second, is that roadway elevation, that 69.3 feet noted at the bottom of the slide here, that's the crown, the top of the roadway there. The reason that's important is we're seeing over 6 inches of flooding during that design storm. We're seeing upwards of 10 inches of flooding during that Hurricane Ian storm. And according to the National Weather Service, 6 inches of flooding in a roadway is all it takes for a passenger vehicle to become buoyant and start floating with the current. So we are exceeding the levels for it not to be safe for passenger sedans to be able to traverse this. When you get up over a foot, that's when small SUVs cannot traverse this. So we're in that range where maybe somebody with an SUV could get by, but somebody with a traditional sedan could not. So we were able to identify the existing conditions, what happens out there. And so the next question was, if we're going to implement improvements, what are our goals? What are we trying to obtain with a solution? So we wanted to start with a passable road, right? And what counts as a passable road? Is there any level of overtopping that the city would allow? Do we want to have a clear, dry path? And the discussion started with, we would love to have a clear, dry path. We want 10 feet of clear, dry pavement. 8 foot is considered minimum for emergency vehicles. We set a 10-foot path of clear, dry pavement at the crown of the roadway to be able to traverse. So just looking at how the roadway slopes and what that crown elevation was, we said we want to be able to keep the flooding down to 69.2 feet in elevation. We ultimately said, okay, that's our goal, but what would be deemed acceptable? And that discussion revolved around if we could keep that overtopping less than 6 inches so that we don't have a concern with passenger vehicles, that emergency vehicles could traverse this, that's kind of that backup plan. So we wanted to test each one of these proposed improvements against those two options. We started out, the city had some requests about evaluating dredging. So that's the first option that we looked into. We looked at dredging the canal, and ultimately what we saw is that the flooding is controlled at Domerick Drive. It's not really controlled by that upstream channel capacity. So we really didn't see any meaningful improvement or reduction in the peak stage of that storm event. What we saw was just that you're getting more flow to the culverts, not necessarily reducing the level of flooding at the culvert. So we did look at dredging as kind of that first pass. The results we saw indicated it was not going to be a meaningful solution to address flooding. So the next question is, we know that those culverts were kind of the pinch point, and so what we wanted to talk about, or what we wanted to evaluate, was upsizing those. I've got a couple different sizes that we evaluated. Effectively, we started with, well, if we go up one size, what happens? And it wasn't meaningful, so we said, what's the largest culvert we can put in this area with the existing infrastructure constraints that we have? And there's two different shapes. So we looked at the elliptical culvert and then the box culvert. And ultimately, the box culvert was always going to give us more capacity. It's a little bit more costly of a project, but that's really what we needed to be able to have meaningful improvements in this area. So the recommendation for just a culvert upsizing was to go with twin 48 by 72 inch box culverts. And we're not changing the profile of the roadway by putting these in. We're really just increasing the capacity of the conduits under the roadway. And that's important. I'll talk to you in a second about why. So what we see with this first alternative, which is putting in the largest possible culverts within the existing footprint of the roadway there, is we see that 100-year 24-hour storm event drop from 69.83 feet down to 69.31 feet. So we're bringing it down almost to that goal. We set that goal at 69.2, so we had that 10 feet of clear roadway. We're getting it to 69.3. So 0.1 feet of roadway overtopping, a nominal amount, about an inch of roadway overtopping during that design storm. Now with Hurricane Ian, we still are able to get a reduction, but the reduction is much less. At that point, we're still getting 0.6 feet of roadway overtopping. So that most severe storm event that we have ever seen in Central Florida was still going to overtop, even with the larger culverts being installed. Implementing a project like this, again, this is raw construction costs. There's a lot that goes into these types of projects, but the construction costs would be a little under $400,000 here. And alternative number two that we looked at, it kind of begged that question of, well, we were trying to stay within the constraints of the existing roadway. What if we decide that we're going to reconstruct the road? So if we're going to raise the roadway profile to try and make sure we can pass that design storm and meet that ultimate goal of 69.2. So we'd be raising the road by a foot, and we'd be using that extra space to put in larger box culverts. So instead of 48 inch by 72 inch, we're going to 60 inch by 72 inch. So raising the roadway a foot to create that extra space for conveyance for the stormwater. So when we do that, what we are able to achieve is meeting that goal of the design storm. So our peak stage in the design storm goes all the way down to 69.18. So we're able to meet our goal. We're kind of even exceeding our goal at that point because we raised the road up a foot. At that point, the road's at 70.3 instead of 69.3. So we're still even meeting that goal even further. So we don't have any roadway overtopping during the design storm. That gives the dry surface for residents and emergency vehicles to be able to get through there. And lift station number 2 is going to have its top slab elevation raised as well to keep that out of the flooding that would occur. So lift station number 2 would be addressed and that design storm would be addressed. However, Hurricane Ian When you get to that storm, you actually see a slight increase in the peak stage on the upstream side of the canal. It goes up a little bit. And you also introduce grade transitions. So as you're reconstructing the roadway at a higher elevation, we can't just put in the road and, it's a foot taller and people just make that jump, right? We've got to have vertical transitions leading up to it. So we're extending the roadway construction about 100 feet on either side of that culvert. That's going to impact driveways. We've got to have new driveway transitions. It's going to impact utilities. So there's a lot more impacts by trying to raise that roadway by a foot. Ultimately, the construction is a lot more extensive, and we're trying to maintain vehicular access and pedestrian accessibility during that type of a project. So it just makes the project more complicated. Implementing that type of an improvement would be just under $800,000, so a little over double the cost of the first alternative. So when you look at the two compared, I've got the table here that kind of highlights what we're looking at. Ultimately, the main difference is if we're changing the roadway profile. So changing the roadway or not changing it versus changing it, that peak stage design storm, allowing a little bit of overtopping in alternative number 1 versus no overtopping in alternative number 2. Again, that Hurricane Ian event, it does actually raise a little bit with the new roadway on the upstream side. So you'd see a little bit more flooding that would occur from that. And lift station number 2, it's going to be protected in the 100-year storm event with the first alternative, and it's going to be protected even during Hurricane Ian in that second alternative. So those are the primary differences between the two alternatives here. Ultimately, the recommendation from Burgess and Neipel was to move forward with alternative number 1. We were able to at least get that overtopping down to 1/10 of a foot during the design storm. The design storm, again, being a 100-year, 24-hour design storm that is on the more extreme sides of design storms for this type of infrastructure. It's going to reduce the impact to adjacent properties. There's less construction uncertainty because we're not changing that roadway profile and impacting a lot of the houses nearby. And lift station 2 still gets protection during that design storm. The last items I wanted to touch on today was just understanding the construction challenges that we'll undergo with this project because of the fact that it is the single point of ingress and egress from the Oak subdivision. We do have to maintain access for both pedestrians and vehicles during construction. So we'll really only be able to work on one lane at a time. And so getting into phased construction, because there's the dual culverts there, we don't want to cut off flow from both culverts at the same time. So we'll really be looking at construction in quadrants. So this project in general will take a little bit more time than it traditionally would because we are going to have to go quadrant to quadrant to be able to accomplish that. But that would allow us to get rid of the really expensive costs of what would be classified as dewatering or transferring the water from one side to the other because the canals or the culverts are inoperable at that time. So with that, I will open it up to any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have questions on this?
What was Ian classified as? Was that a 500-year storm?
Yeah, Ian was technically classified between a 500-year and a 1,000-year storm.
Okay. It's positively biblical. All right. Anything else?
You know, I read through the study, and boy, I tell you, the software and the analytics have come a long way in the last 20 years. When I worked at an engineering firm, we would never get a stormwater report this detailed or this nice. I know we did channel analysis back in the early 2000s. And at that point, it was even difficult to look at, maintaining that canal because we didn't have any easements over the properties. And I'm guessing we still don't have easements over those properties. With this alternative number 1, even with some overtopping, and I'm assuming that we had some sub-base damage through the saturation with water going across that roadway. will we still have, some damage that way versus taking and trying to get the water underneath the culverts? And I guess even under a heating condition, we're still going to have water pushing up against the road, no matter what.
Yeah, you will still have water under an Ian condition. You will still have water pushing up against the road. The benefit with the box culvert design versus that elliptical culvert design is you do have more of that solid structural design versus depending on the soils below it for that structural support. So while that may be still a concern, the concern is reduced by going to the concrete box culvert design.
Well, certainly you hit on the three top things. That the first thing I looked at was, again, we've got to have access to that neighborhood. Unfortunately, when Maitland permitted that years ago, they didn't require a second ingress, egress. And so we have them landlocked. And I don't think we want to buy a helicopter to evacuate them out of there during these storm events. So, and then again, you know, the lift station, I saw your recommendation to put a remote hookup away from that lift station. So if we do get flooding, they can safely deploy an emergency generator without our staff getting electrocuted trying to get it started and function. So I think that's a great idea as well. If we have a location, we can put that. And then again, you know, certainly Ian did its number on the rise of water outside of that creek bed. And I don't know that we can ever control that. That's Mother Nature, you know, so, but we can try to minimize the impact of that roadway. So I would concur. I think alternative one is probably our best bet, the best bang for our buck.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, so you went into a little bit of the issue with the second alternative, which was once you raise the road to that level, you've kind of created somewhat of a dam in an Ian situation. So the homes upstream from there would be in more peril, is that right?
Yeah, so the roadway overtopping effectively acts as the release for the stormwater that's being built up on the upstream side. So by raising the roadway to try and increase what may happen, what may convey during a normal event, what you're doing is during those extreme events, you're making it hard for that release to occur. So the water is going to stage up higher on that upstream side until it can find that low point to be able to cross over.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other? No. Okay. Let's go to the public. Anybody from the public have any comment on this? Yes, please come up and can you give us your name and address, and we'll
press these buttons here. Okay. All right. Brian Cooper, 760 Domrick Drive. I'm at ground zero for these culverts. We've lived there for 13 years. We've had events not just associated with hurricanes, but just heavy rainstorms where that water comes right up to the top of our, we have a little riprap retaining wall, and it comes right up to the top of that water wall. And so my issue with alternative one is every time there's a storm, this canal, as we're calling it, is carrying the city's stormwater, right? Because there's culverts that go underneath Sequoia Trail into this thing and it comes down. And there's overgrown camphor trees all down that creek. And giant branches break off and they come all the way down the creek and they all settle right there at these two culverts. And during a storm, all it takes is one branch to stop, and then all the other debris comes and it all blocks. And then it all starts backing up into our yard. So we've had events, non-hurricane events, where it gets very close to our house. It got like 6 inches from our house 5 years ago before Ian. So I think a box culvert would allow, I'm not an engineer, but I think it would allow a lot more flow through and less kind of blocking is my, homeowner opinion of it. But it's just years of like us having to maintain city stormwater systems is a little silly to me. It seems like the there should be something else done. I don't know what else you can do with it. It's a natural creek as well as carrying stormwater. So it's a tough one. But so I definitely like the idea. Thank you guys for doing the study and like taking this serious, because we've dealt with it for a long time. But like the second issue I have with this whole creek is settling and erosion in our property. So our property we're losing ground. It's dipping into the creek now. We've got a point where our pool deck has separated by about 1.5 inches, and it's going down towards the creek. And so I know I said I like option 2, but you mentioned it may stack up higher. I mean, just the other night it was raining and it was at the top of the rocks. So like I would need some reinforcement on that creek by our property. Otherwise, half my backyard's going to be underwater, you know? So that's something I think we got to consider. That's not part of this plan or this study that you guys did, but I think that's got to be addressed as well. Because I think a little retaining wall, I got a quote from a guy that will do it for like $8,000, but would level us off and then have a clear drop off into the creek, and I would be protected from this water coming up onto our property all the time. I think that's all I wanted to say. Yeah. And then real quick, the dredging, you mentioned that. So when we first moved in, this creek, I could stand in the creek bed. It was 6 feet tall. I couldn't see over those rocks. And now years and years of sand and sediment has built up, and it's, now it's 2 feet or 3 feet tall. So there is a ton more sediment in there than there used to be. And again, it all comes down the creek and then it settles right at our house. And so, I mean, maybe a little dredging there would help some flow as well. But thanks for the process, and hopefully we can get a solution here. Thanks.
All right, Brian.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Anybody else? Yes.
My name is David Pewter. I'm at 761 Domrick Drive. So he's on the side, I'm on the side closer to Lake Minnehaha. So during Ian, our house was completely surrounded by water on both sides. It went through our garage, $20,000 worth of damage into a bathroom, the garage. And so I came here and presented to y'all. Most of you were here. And I'm really happy to see this. This was a great high level, articulate presentation, good design. There's a couple things you need to keep in mind. One is we had a second storm recently where we were ready, but we had to take matters into our own hands. It was like 4 hours before the storm was coming. It was a big one. And we got out and we cleared about 2 feet of muck, branches and stuff underneath this thing, all the way through the bottom of the street. And that 2 feet probably kept it from completely flooding that time around. So I think we also need a really good city, solution to this, so that like the muck and kind of the branches and the rocks, all that stuff underneath gets cleared out before big storms come in. Okay, that's number one. Number two, there is a big issue with trees, and Brian here is out there during the storm pushing the branches so that they continue to flow. And he's out there for hours, and it's dangerous. If someone were to fall in there, I mean, can you imagine? It just sucks him down this 50-foot tube there, So it is dangerous the way it is going right now. And when that water was about 1.5 feet, 2 feet tall in some places during Ian, there was kids out there walking around. We're trying to divert the water outside from our house. There's kids out there, and at one point we were just like, we got to send these kids home because, if a line comes on and shocks them, we're all dead. So okay, there's that. And then, yeah, I think it's a big deal to keep that whole, the Oaks, so I'm advocating for the Oaks people, keeping them all stuck in there. And so I think that the 4-stage way of probably plan B would be the best. And I think because we have to also accommodate for, there's going to be muck, there's going to be branches, and we need the branches to be able to move through. So thank you for your time.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Peter. Any questions? Anybody else? Let's close the public period then. So is this a single box culvert where you have two culverts now?
Yeah, 2 box culverts.
Two box culverts. So
Yes.
we're still going to have, I mean, there still is an issue of perhaps debris being caught on the front end of it.
Yeah, there's going to be significantly larger openings, but there is the potential.
Okay.
There's always going to be that potential, no matter what you do.
Mm-hmm. And okay. All right. Any further discussion? Anybody?
Well, I just wanted to add again, you know, we had this discussion probably the early 2000s with the council and the Stormwater Lakes Management, the advisory board, Lakes Advisory Board. We don't have any easements along that creek. It's all private property. And so that's the constraint we have, is not being able to use city funds on private property. Back then, we actually looked at, if we did have those easements, we could remove trees. We could help build seawalls to channelize it more, but that's not the case. Back then, the residents along there refused to give any easements for that. So I think we're constrained to whatever we can do within the road right away and in the creek bed that is going out towards Minnehaha that's within, public domain. Beyond that, we're kind of hamstrung. We can't stop the flows out of the Lake of the Woods. That's Seminole County. We have no ability to store it anywhere upstream, so it's going to come down. So I think, what Burgess and Nyepel has presented was larger box culverts, or square versus elliptical, is going to give you a bit more capacity for some of that debris to run through it. But yeah, you can't guarantee that everything's going to run through it. Something could get snagged. A larger branch can stop other branches. This is just inherent in living next to creeks. So.
Yeah. So one question I had is with regard to the sedimentation just upstream of the culverts. If you have, once you place larger culverts there, once you have a larger conveyance system, I guess with more volume more quickly, does that help flush out the sedimentation upstream over time, or what's?
Yeah, you'll get some of that with that large first pass. As the water picks up velocity, it will pick up some of that sediment, but you're still going to end up over time with the natural deposits that occur. I think with the box culverts and with the potential construction that we're talking about, it may give the city more of an opportunity to use the equipment they have to be able to clean that out a little bit better versus the current design out there.
Mm-hmm.
One more thing, there is a ton of sediment that comes down, and we are in this continual battle to not have our dock completely surrounded by sand. So we have a dock. There's so much sediment that's coming down every year. So we're hiring people a couple times a year to try to clear that place out and put it sediment.
Yeah, that's the comment was there's sedimentation downstream where it's being put at the entrance to the lake. Yeah, and I'm aware of that as well. So yeah, thank you for pointing that out. All right, what do we say about this item in front of us, which is we have the opportunity to do nothing. We have the opportunity to take option 1 or the option 2.
I don't think we have an option to do nothing. I think we have to do something for the sake of, again, the Oaks, to have them cut off completely. I don't know how many homes are back in there, but if we had to get emergency vehicles back in there for any kind of medical situation, because there's 2 things that happen to that roadway. One is, and we see this on the news all the time, emergency response teams tell us don't go through flooded roads. And so now you're having people go through a flooded road that could be deteriorated enough where certainly I think the box culvert will be strong enough to hold that support up. But these culverts, these elliptical pipes might not be able to. And so if that road crumbles underneath and you got a fire truck going across it, we might have a fire truck in that creek. So I think do nothing is not an option. The other thing is I think we've got to protect that lift station. We don't want to continually have situations where raw sewage is going into that lake either, or into the street, overflow into the street. So I'm going to make a motion that we approve alternative number 1 to move forward.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Lori, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Randolph,
Aye.
Councilmember French,
Aye.
Councilmember Shaney,
Aye.
Councilmember Gibbons,
Aye.
Mayor Lowndes.
Aye. Okay. We are going with option number 1. Great. So we're on to the next item, which is council seat 3 vacancy. And, oh,
Thank you guys.
oh yeah.
You're welcome.
Thanks for
Thank you
coming out. Thanks for waiting all this time with us.
Yeah.
Brian's brother.
Okay, so this one, Lori, is for you to introduce, yes?
He's a winter park kid.
Mayor and council, this item before you is to establish the process and timeline for filling the anticipated vacancy in council seat 3 as outlined in the staff report. Upon Mayor Lowndes' resignation becoming effective November 2nd, Vice Mayor French will become mayor and council seat 3 will become vacant. Under the city charter, council is responsible for appointing an eligible resident to fill the vacancy until a successor is elected at the March 9th, 2027 general municipal election. The proposed process is consistent with the city's most recent council vacancy process. Applications would be accepted October 1 through October 15th, then council having the opportunity to meet and or interview eligible applicants at the October 26th meeting. The formal appointment will not occur at the November 9th after the vacancy officially occurs, and then with the appointed council member taking office December 14th. The complete timeline and eligibility requirements were included in the staff report. Tonight, staff is asking council to approve the appointment process and proposed timeline. The application process would begin October 1. Mark and I will be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions on this proposed procedure?
No, I thought it was a good procedure, well thought out. My question is, so we're appointing somebody to fulfill until next April. Would Vance qualify for that? Is a past council member?
No, because for the charter, he has to set out an election cycle.
But that's an appointment just for a 6-month
The
period.
charter is specific to being elected or appointed.
Okay, all right. So he would not be eligible.
That's correct.
Okay. I thought you might like this procedure, Bill, because it was successful in your sake. You did well under this regime, Bill. Yeah, so I think that's a good procedure. It worked well last time. I think we have, we'll get applications, then we'll have the opportunity to interview people. And that looks, what do you need from us on this? Do we need to pass this as a?
Yep.
Yep.
So are we going to have Robert Sargent put this out on the emails? It's going to be on the website?
Yes. We'll
Is that
use
typically
all of
how
our
we've gotten it
channels
out
to
in the
put this out
past?
for the
What we
application.
did is be the same process we followed for yours. It goes on the website, you can fill out the application.
So I would imagine some of that's word of mouth because, how do you get people to the website to know that it's there too? So,
I believe last time we did a social media that we were
Okay.
looking for seat
okay.
7. Mhm.
Okay. Let's put it out to the public for public comment here, although I think everybody here is on the clock, as far as I can tell. Most of them, maybe there's one. Open comment period. All right, let's close the comment period. Any further discussion or a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the process as presented.
I'll second it.
Okay, Laurie, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Shaney,
Aye.
Councilmember Gibbons,
Aye.
Councilmember French,
Aye.
Councilmember Randolph,
Aye.
Mayor Lowndes.
Aye. Okay. We have a procedure, and that concludes our decisions for the evening. And we're on to reports. Mr. City Manager, anything to report?
Just real quickly, on August 30th, we're having a special farmers market. It's Kids Day at the farmers market, so we'll have a bunch of kid activities set up for that. We have a Maitland community cleanup, September 19th at Lake Minnehaha Park. We're getting back into our festival season, so we'll start with our Get Down Downtowns October 2nd, followed by our first movie in the park, Minions and Monsters on October 10th, and then rolling into Halloween here in Independence Square on October 24th. So another year is winding down.
Okay. Well, that sounds exciting. It's good to know that fall is right around the corner.
Yeah.
Mr. City Attorney, anything?
I have nothing. I will say that on the property tax thing that everybody's been watching, including myself, we know that the AG submitted additional or revised language that actually looks like somebody went to law school, because anybody who had been to law school would know that the original language was not going to go anywhere. But there's not been an order entered by the trial judge to say specifically this new language is acceptable. But what is instead has happened is that the attorney who objected said that the new language is sufficient. Again, I would agree, having read the language, it's neutral, which is the whole point. But I can't tell you officially that it's going to be on there in November without an order, and there is not one that's been entered yet. So we'll see.
Okay, thank you. Anybody on council have a report?
Grand opening at Art and History Museum on Thursday night.
All right.
6 o'clock, right?
Right. Okay. Anybody else? I have just one report. It's somewhat of a report. It's more of a discussion, but I am interested in moving forward on improving our planning and permitting processes, and just want to let you know I may have a proposal for that at the next meeting, so that we can start discussing that and seeing what the shape of that might be. Because I think there's more improvement that we could explore anyway and see what we can do. But other than that, that's all I have. Anybody else?
Yeah, I just have more of a question. So we all got, I'm assuming everybody got it, the email from a lady who was talking about tonight on the agenda, a topic which was Maitland Avenue, 500 North Maitland Avenue,
right,
which is the Calmanson property, which wasn't on the agenda, but is something proposed or coming forward? It sounded like she was thinking that we were going to take up, a planning process on that particular site.
No, that's working its way through the process. Mr.
Okay,
Calvinson is proposing something in his
Okay.
property at 500 North, but it's not ripe for your decision yet.
Okay, all right. So there is something out there. All right.
I just
Bless you.
just want to thank Chief Morton and the fire department EMT response to a medical call at my house. Turned out fine. It was my mom, and we really appreciated everything. It was kind of surreal, but I saw them all in action, and they also assessed my house for a fire call, which was kind of interesting too. So thanks again for all your help and your caring team.
Okay. All right. Well, on that positive note, let's adjourn. Thanks.